Hades 2 really destroyed my sleep schedule, and I know that sounds dramatic, but this game has a terrifying ability to make time disappear, because every single run feels like, okay, this is the one, and then suddenly you're upgrading another Arcana card, trying another weapon, testing another broken build, convincing yourself that you can beat one more boss. The worst part, I don't even think Hades 2 is trying to be addictive. It's just so good at rewarding you every few minutes that stopping almost feels unnatural. And somewhere around 15 hours, I realized Supergiant Games has created something special. They made Hades again, but this time they understood exactly why people got obsessed with the first game, and they pushed every single part of it even further. The scariest thing about Hades 2 is how fast the addiction starts. Not after 10 hours, not after the first boss, but the effect happens immediately. Because the second you die, the game already has another idea waiting for you. It makes you think that maybe this run would have worked with a different boon, maybe that weapon you struggled with is secretly insane, maybe your build was one upgrade away from becoming broken. That maybe is lethal. And Hades 2 weaponizes it constantly. Every failure feels recoverable, every run feels improvable. And that's the trap. You're never really stopping on a loss. You're stopping in the middle of a possibility. And that's why one more run becomes 5, then 10, then suddenly you're deep into build crafting at 2 AM like you're studying for an exam. Now at first I thought Melinoë felt weaker than Zagreus, and honestly that annoyed me. Combat felt slower, more fragile, less aggressive, but then it clicked because she isn't designed like Zagreus at all. And once I understood that, the entire combat system opened up. I started realizing her abilities are built around control instead of pure aggression, holding Omega attacks to completely nuke a room, stacking curses before enemies could even reach me. I stopped playing like a reckless brawler and started fighting like a witch. And once the mana system started clicking with my build, the combat became completely ridiculous. I was chaining abilities together so fast, the screen basically turned into visual chaos. Lightning bouncing everywhere, projectiles covering the map, enemies exploding before I could even fully process what happened. And weirdly enough, that made the game feel even more intense. But not every run will feel the same. Hades 2 also has moments where you are one mistake away from ruining your run, especially later on. There were runs where I felt completely unstoppable, one room, and then I was dead 2 rooms later. That tension is addictive, and the best part, every successful run feels earned. This was the moment the game completely hooked me. The first truly broken build. You'll start with a mediocre run, nothing special, but then that one upgrade changes everything, and then your brain immediately goes, I need to recreate this. That's where the addiction really starts, because now you're not just playing to beat the game, but to chase a feeling, trying to rediscover that perfect build again. Now there's something Hades 2 understands that a lot of games don't. Frustration matters. Not annoying frustration, but meaningful frustration, because this game will absolutely humble you. The bosses can be brutal, not because they're unfair, but because they force you to pay attention. And those near-death moments become the run you remember the most. The best Hades 2 runs don't feel clean. They feel desperate, messy, chaotic, like you barely survived something you probably shouldn't have survived. And honestly, that's where the game is at its best. Now I don't really understand how Supergiant Games consistently makes games with this much personality, because everything about Hades 2 is absolutely beautiful. The art direction is awesome, the soundtrack somehow goes even harder than the first game, the voice acting is great, and the amount of dialogue honestly feels ridiculous. No matter how many runs I did, the game still had new things to say, which matters way more than people realize, because it prevents repetition from setting in, and most roguelikes eventually start feeling mechanical. But Hades 2 keeps evolving, and that's a massive difference. But overall, I think the reason why Hades 2 is so addictive comes down to one thing: the gameplay loop. The game never lets your excitement fully die. You lose a run, you unlock something. You hit a wall, you discover a new mechanic. You die to a boss, you immediately want revenge. Everything pushes you forward constantly, and the dangerous part is how smooth the overall experience feels. There's almost no friction between I should stop playing and actually one more run. That's why this game is so dangerous, because eventually you will stop playing for the story. You start playing because your brain genuinely craves the loop. And honestly, very few games can pull that off. And yes, Hades 2 does feel very familiar, but that's also why the sequel works so well, because instead of trying to reinvent everything, Supergiant focused on expanding the parts people already loved from the first game. The world is so much bigger, the combat has way more layers, the build gets even more chaotic, and the overall progression loop somehow becomes even harder to stop playing. It doesn't try to replace the first game, it simply evolves it. So yeah, Hades 2 is painfully addictive, and I honestly don't see myself stopping anytime soon. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and as always, happy gaming!